Ben, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We had a show together on January 13th, and we've been basically discussing how this thing, we said we predicted that Bitcoin top, this is 2026 outlook, and I have to say it became pretty accurate. We're saying that it's going to be like kind of like a water flow as Bitcoin goes down in a downtrend on a higher time frame. And then just recently, as we discussed that there are obviously going to be bear market rallies, you've been very accurately saying that we're going back to the 200 daily moving average. And if you look at simply the chart, which is what I do, it was a clear sign that mid-May is basically the new top. Bitcoin is down 25% since then. The question that I think everybody's really wondering, especially the people who watched that show and followed along, is when is the bottom? When is this bleeding ending? Are we going much lower? Are we hitting, you're sometimes surfacing 38,000? Is that where we're heading to, or we're reversing very soon? What do you think?
Well, I mean, normally the way it plays out is Bitcoin finds a low in the summer, and then we get a bounce kind of in the later part of the summer, and then we get the final drop into the fourth quarter of the year, which then marks the bottom. So that's my best guess would be the fourth quarter of the year. And again, if you think about how every cycle has played out so far for Bitcoin, every top has occurred, near
I'll
the
bring up
end
your
of the
chart.
post-halving. Yeah, like bring up my chart and you can see like every prior top has essentially occurred near the end of the post-halving year. So you have Q4 of 2013, Q4 2017, Q4 2021, and Q4 2025. But what's interesting is that the bear markets have historically lasted about 1 year, plus or minus a month or two. So in 2017, it was December 2017 to December 2018 was the bear market. And then in 2021, it was November 2021 to November 2022. So, I've just been speculating, dubiously, of course, that what if it's just October 2025 to October 2026? So, my guess is that it's probably going to be in the fourth quarter of the year, likely around October. Um, that's how I think this is going to play out. But I will say, one thing that would make me change my mind is if like a lot of the on-chain indicators were to completely reset. Okay. So there's a lot of on-chain indicators, like the MVRV Z-score. You can see that normally resets below zero.
We're very close to that.
And
Surprisingly close to
we
that.
are. Right. And actually one of the things, which is why I was pretty adamant that the low was not in for February, was because historically the Bitcoin percentage of supply and profit and loss, the low is not in until after they cross, like sometime after they cross. And they hadn't crossed in February. They've crossed now. So now we have to be a little bit more aware of, hey, like the market cycle bottom could occur at any moment. But it's these on-chain charts that I think help people kind of stay on the right side of the market. And when you look, if you actually look at a lot of the on-chain metrics, so this is combining the Pure multiple, the MVRV score, the MVRV Z-score, transaction fees, terminal price, the market cap to thumb cap ratio, and the miner cap to thumb cap ratio. And if you normalize Bitcoin's performance or those on-chain metrics between 0 and 1, historically the market cycle lows tend to occur down here, right? And so if that were to happen, like if that were to happen in say June, then I wouldn't wait until October. And one
What
of
is
the
it
charts that I
exactly
like,
that you're looking for to happen in June? Because we're almost at the end of June. So what is it that you're
right,
actually looking for?
if there is a big drop, right, where if we were to go, let's say to 40K or something crazy, which I know it feels like it's impossible, right? But if something like that were to happen, then I wouldn't wait until October, right? I would turn bullish because it wouldn't matter. And let me show you an example, right? Because I think people deserve to have like examples of like why things play out sometimes differently. Look at the S&P 500. People say that we only have 3 data points for the 4-year cycle, but the S&P 500, has also gone through 4-year cycles many, many times where the lows occur approximately every 4 years, as you can see, right? It's
We
approximately
went
every four
through in,
years.
in, in detail as well in the previous show. We're gonna put it up. It's worth watching as well.
Exactly. And what you'll notice is that a lot of times the low occurs in October. So you can see October of 1966, October of 1974, even October of 2022, right? I mean, actually, 2022, the stock market bottomed in October. But if you look at 1970, the stock market actually bottomed in like late May, early June, and it was after a massive capitulation down, where as measured from the high, the stock market dropped 37%. That's a big drop for the stock market. I mean, for Bitcoin, it's another Tuesday, but for the stock market, that's a big drop. And
Yes.
so, like, I think the most likely time for a low would be October. But if at any point between now and then, if we were to see like a big crash, then I wouldn't wait. And some people might say, well, 50% down is already a big crash. But if you compare, and I don't know if we did this in January or not, maybe you remember, did we do the comparison at all between 2019 and 2025 and 2026? Do
I
you
think we
remember?
I think we didn't.
Okay. Because there's some
Oh yeah, you
rationale.
showed this chart. Now I remember. But go through it because I think it's
Right.
very, very important.
Right. Well, so the rationale for comparing 2025 to 2019 is that Bitcoin topped on apathy rather
Mm.
than euphoria, and there was no rotation into altcoins, both in 2019 and in 2025. Also, both rallies were characterized by Bitcoin dominance going up, right? They
Mm.
were characterized by Bitcoin dominance going up. Also, both rallies corresponded to a year where the Federal Reserve cut interest rates by a 75 basis point in both environments. And to top it off, it also corresponded to Bitcoin in both cases topped 2 months before the Federal Reserve ended quantitative easing, or sorry, quantitative tightening. So you can see that in 2019, Bitcoin topped in June, QT ended in August, and then in 2025, Bitcoin topped in October, and QT ended in December. Okay, so you can see that in both cases, where if you look at like this green line where it sort of
Mm.
bottoms out and starts to head back up. So there's plenty of rationale for that. Now, if you overlay, right, like if you overlay the 2019 bear market, we know it ended with the pandemic, right? We know that's what it ended with. And if you just happen to overlay the 2025 bear market, you can see that it's tracked it pretty closely. We even had this rally, and now we're kind of approaching where in the 2019 2020 style move, we had this massive capitulation. Now, it's not my base case because I'm not calling for a pandemic, right? Like I'm not calling for anything like that. But we know, I mean, if you truly believe that the everything is on the chart and not in the narratives, then I don't need to know like what's going on outside of the chart to make a decision. If I'm looking at the chart at any point over the next say 6 months and Bitcoin is trading say 60 to 70% down from its yearly open, then I'm a bull, right? And the other thing that would make me be a bull is if we had time-based capitulation, right? So if we have our full year bear market, October to October, it doesn't matter how low it goes, right? We could bottom at 60, we could bottom at 30, 40, or 50, whatever the price is, by the end of the year, I would probably flip bullish regardless. And that's more so of it's a time-based capitulation.
Mm.
But in the short term, we likely there usually is a counter trend rally by Bitcoin. Like there's multiple ones, and I know you've dealt with this too as well because you were on the right side of the market late last year, and there's been no shortage of people dunking on the bears this year. And I
I
mean,
didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to bring it up because I know everybody. But it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the amount of hate of people getting that. But you've been handling it extremely well. I need to learn to handle it the way that you
well,
do.
well, I think the and I say this a lot, like bear markets make fools of both bulls and bears, right? Like you can't go into it. The hard thing about being a bear in a bear market is there's going to be some like face ripping rallies in the bear market, and they're going to last for like several months. And the best you can do is be like, try to be whenever you have these massive capitulations, try to cool off with the bearish rhetoric because like, okay, we're going to have a few months of a rally. But I mean, the same thing happens in every bear market. Like every February of every midterm year marks a low or around there, and then you rally for a few
It's
months,
just so
And
interesting to me. It's just so interesting to me because last time as well we spoke about all the stuff that you explained in the last show, and now as well is basically showing on the chart as well. I actually was when you said October, there was a clear pattern we discussed. There was a lower low on the chart after creating a new high, and then it's just retraced, and then from there we're going low. And everybody was like, "This is just a retrace." All the comments, a lot of comments as well. This is just a retrace. You guys are way too bearish. This is a demands and all that, and the same pattern that we've seen. And when you said, "I don't have to know anything else if I see the chart," the same pattern that we had back in October played out here in May. And the moment we had this down here on 28th of May, this is when I posted this sell. And basically, this is where you said the rejection, when the rejection happened, basically from this level, from around the $80,000, $81,000, that is the exact thing when the rally basically died. A lot of people started buying the dip and it went down 22%. So just as a summary of what you're saying, does that mean that you believe that we should have a bottom, final bottom till October, but that bottom can be 55 and can be 38, can be 42. It's rather the time base, and then we'll see where it goes. And one more thing, what is your, if there is no drop, because this is what I'm looking at. If you look at the previous cycles, every single time it was marked with a higher high, whether on a daily, is the exact reverse that I've been talking about on the top, right? So if you look at this here, massive, long time of just choppiness, and then a higher high, and then from there, you know, a move down here as well, choppiness, then a down move. So like, is there a catalyst, so to say, that you're looking for if there is no drop?
Not really. I think it's just time. Like, I think a lot of people, like myself, are going to believe that the 4-year cycle is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think a narrative will be blamed. I mean, I think people might be talking about the Clarity Act. They may be talking about AI or you know, perhaps the IPOs from Anthropic and OpenAI. I don't know what the narrative will be, but I think there's a good chance we're going to see semis get a correction in the second half of this year, and that's likely going to lead to a drop in the stock market. So if you look at the stock market in late 2014, late 2018, and late 2022, in all 3 of those midterm years, the stock market had a 10 to 20% drop. And it also had a drop at the beginning of the midterm years as well. So usually what happens is the stock market drops at the beginning of the midterm year, it causes Bitcoin to go down, you know, and it have its first major leg down. We had that going into February. And then at the end of the midterm year, the stock market gets another 10 to 20% drop. And it's during that drop that Bitcoin finds its market cycle low. So I couldn't tell you what it's going to be. I mean, one thing I've thought about somewhat is like, I wonder, you know how at a lot of like speeches and stuff recently, a lot of retail, or maybe I shouldn't say retail, but a lot of people just on Main Street have been booing AI, right? Like AI has not really been a popular narrative. Well, recently we saw the administration, you know, make Anthropic pull back their recent release, citing national security concerns. So I wonder, like, part of me wonders if the way the stock market gets a secondary correction in the back half of the year, like it did in the last 3 midterm years, is because the administration realizes that in order to do better in the midterms, perhaps they need to be seen as a little bit anti-AI going into the midterms.
Interesting.
And that could certainly lead to a correction in semis. And if the stock market is going down, I would expect Bitcoin to go down too. But by that point, you know, the 4-year cycle for Bitcoin will likely almost be complete. And then I have a feeling that sometime after
crypto is the only underperforming asset class. I mean, it just makes sense to start deploying back into crypto once the stock market starts crashing.
And it bleeds. Crypto's been bleeding to everything this year, right? Like, I mean, Bitcoin, and this is what, you know, I'm sure you tell people as well, is, you know, a lot of people will get FOMO on every single counter trend rally by Bitcoin, right? Like they got FOMO when it rallied back up to 98K in January, and then when it rallied up to 82K in May. But the reality is if you were buying other things this year that were actually in a bull market, then you're not really that concerned about missing a couple of counter trend rallies in an asset that's in a bear market. Like, it just doesn't matter. So it's all about reminding ourselves that there's always a bull market somewhere, and the bull market will likely come back for Bitcoin, but it's unlikely to really come back until later this year.
Ben, appreciate you a lot. When and if that happens, we'll get you back on the channel. But we have another video coming up as well. I really want to get your thoughts on the Fed and Warsh and what is really happening. So that's going to be the next one. But for now, Ben, truly appreciate you. And for anybody's watching, subscribe to the channel and come back for the next one. Ben, thank you.
Thanks, 𝗲𝗓𝗻.